will be about the Sage Intacct dashboards and how configurable they are versus roles and each individual person within businesses. A little bit about the top level entities themselves, and also how you can group different entities within Sage Intacct. All about the drill down within the Intacct platform, getting right down to the source data within any of the reports. About the dimensions, so how many different dimensions that you can actually report on within your business and set up in Sage Intacct, the reporting themselves, and how flexible and easy it is to get the information that you want out of Sage Intacct for your business. And also a little bit about inter-entity transactions. So especially if you're a multi-entity company, how you can use the full functionality of Intacct to do that. So this is an open forum, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them while Pam's demonstrating. Just come off mute and ask anything that you like. And I will leave that over to Pam.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. Right, so let's dive in and have a look at Intacct. So just signing in, you'll notice that it's going to take us straight to the project performance dashboard. So when a user is set up in Intacct, you can configure them to have their landing page when they first log in to be a dashboard, or it might be, you know, an accounts payable workflow screen if the dashboard's not applicable to them. So you've got a lot of choice of how you set up your users and what sort of information is presented to them when they first log in. So we're going to start off on the dashboard, and you can see here I've got some filters across the top. So at the moment, my demo data is a little bit old, so 2020, but I'm filtering for a particular company. If I remove that filter and go with all of my entities, apply that, you'll see we'll get a lot more data. I've actually got the data now for all of my entities. Intacct is complete multi-entity. So when we're at this top level, is what they refer to it as, it is covering all the entities in your group. So it's more of a consolidated view. You can also have the ability to work at an individual company level. And when you do that, it'll open up another tab telling you which entity that tab is for. And you can also see at the top of the screen here. Now, straight away, that's the same dashboard, but filtered to give the results just for that one entity. So if we go back to the top level and make use of this filter at the top here, you'll see that if I pick that same entity, then my two dashboards look the same. They're just two different ways of looking at it. So the top level gets a lot more flexibility because you can filter not only by a single entity, but you can start to create entity groups. So if you have some varying business types and you want to group them into the different business types, you can look at the results of each of those groups. Clear that out. You can also start to filter on jobs and job groups. So, you know, if I were to look at all of the residential jobs across all of my companies, then you'll see the dashboard changes again. And I'm seeing just the residential jobs. And again, it's consolidated across all my companies. So if I've got residential jobs in more than one entity, I'm seeing everything here. And you can mix and match these filters to get exactly the results you want to see. Now, the other nice thing about this screen is the ability to see your results at any point in time. So I'm currently looking at March, but if I want to go back a month, just jump back to February and apply that filter, and I'm getting the prior month's results. Now you can build these dashboards yourself. They've got these scorecard components that you can incorporate into them. You can incorporate financial reports like you see here. And given your permissions, you can go in and edit these, the people that have permission to do that. So if there's something not quite right, you can go in and edit it. And it will actually open up the financial design in another window where you can go and make your changes, and then that will then flow through onto the dashboard. Okay. So I'm just going to pop this on the other screen. Okay. So the dashboards, you can configure as many dashboards as you like. Typically people will set up dashboards applicable to each of the different types of users. So a project performance, it's going to be your project managers. Maybe you've got one that's got more financial ratios that would be used by a financial controller or somebody. I'm just going to log into another instance that has some good dashboards. I've got a couple of different demo data sets, and each one used for a slightly different thing to demonstrate. So I'll just show you some role-based dashboards that have been built in this one. So you can see this one is my Skyline demo company, and I've got a controller-based dashboard. So you can see it's more of a financial focus, less of a project focus. And we can have all sorts of different dashboards. You could have your AP. And so it's presenting all of your vendor aging and, even all the transactions. So there's a variety of components that can go into your dashboards, lots of power in there of what you want to set up and customize for yourself. The other cool thing about these dashboards is that each of these figures that you see in blue can be drilled down on. So if you want to see what makes up this 137,000, we click on it. It's going to open up the transaction report in another screen. I'll just make that nice and big. And you can see there's my 137,000 at the bottom there. Now, perhaps I'm viewing this and I'm thinking, oh, what's this invoice for 4,480? If I click on it again, it's actually going to take me in and take me right back to that AP invoice. So I can see the invoice, I can see if it's been paid, what the status is. There's a history in there, so you can actually see who created it. You can see if any changes have been, if it's been modified, and posting details of how it's hit your general ledger. So it's great. You can drill right down to the source transactions. And if you did have an image of the invoice attached to the invoice in accounts payable, you'd even be able to click on that image and view the actual invoice that went with it. The power of Intacct is really using the dimensions. So entities and departments and customers and vendors, they're all the different dimensions. So if we go and have a look, you can see here we've got departments, employees, locations. Jump in, we'll see a more complete list in here. So if you've got construction reporting, construction turned on, then you're going to see your lists of jobs, cost codes. So all of these different dimensions can be used in building your reports, whether it's down the page, rather than GL accounts, you might want to see it by job down the page or by cost code, and also in columns across the page. Financial reporting and consolidations really becomes a breeze in here. So if we go and have a look at some of the reports that you get out of the box, you do get a whole host of reports out of the box. Now, it becomes really easy to start from just a basic profit and loss to then start creating variations of those. So if we look at the profit and loss by location, you'll see that in the columns of that design, it's really just very simple. You've got your accounts and you've got your actuals. But this is where Intacct gets really powerful, where it's got this expand by. So in here, we've set up this profit and loss to expand by locations, which are all the entities. And so what this does is Intacct takes that current month result and automatically creates a column for each entity within the group that's been selected to be printed. And so if your entity group currently has 5 entities, but you later go and add another one, no changes are necessary to the report design. It'll just automatically get picked up in that group, and the report will then have the 6th column for that extra entity. So it's very powerful in what you can do with it, and not needing to maintain it so much. Likewise with when you're wanting to create a report, perhaps profit and loss by month. So if we go in, you can see if I want to create one that's based on this report, it is just so easy to be able to duplicate a report that you like the layout of, and then go and give it a new name. So I'm going to call this one profit and loss by month. So now if I go to my profit and loss by month, there it is here, and I'll go and edit this one. So in my columns, I'll just take some of these out. Okay, so in my actual column, rather than current month, let's just have current year to date. So now I've got from January through to May. But what I want to do is I want to have a separate column for each month. So it's as easy as coming down here. Instead of actually hard coding each individual column in, I can now expand by time periods, and I can expand by quarters or by months. And so now when I print this report, I will have 5 individual columns. Now I'm just going to go and save that. So there's my one by month. So my data is best back in 2020, so please excuse me using an old date. Okay, so if I grab this company, you can see I've now got January, February, March. So this one's running on a calendar year. But if you had a fiscal year and from July through to June, if you were to pick December, then you'd have 6 columns. If you were to pick March, you'd automatically have 9 columns. The system will spread that out automatically to the number of periods within the cutoff date you've chosen. Okay, has anybody got any questions so far? Anything? I'll just plow on. No, all good. All right, so it really is powerful with those dimensions. You don't have to report on individual dimensions. It also has the ability of being able to set up dimension groups. So any of these dimensions here where we're looking at individual ones, we can also go and start creating groups of them. So if we look at the locations, if I want to add a group of locations, I can come in and just give it an ID, which I'm terrible at coming up with IDs, so I'm just going to call it test. And then I can say that it has specific members in my group. I can go and pick a particular entity. So maybe I wanted to have general construction and residential in this group. So just go and define what your group is made up of. Now you don't have to do specific members. You can say all members, but then apply some filters. So perhaps if you were doing your grouping, if you gave some careful consideration, maybe your ID is numeric and you have one group, is between 100 and 199. So you could easily go in and say the ID is, greater than, and put in your value, and then your ID is less than. And so that way, if you added anything, any new entity within that range that you've set up, then it would automatically be pulled into this group without needing to maintain your group members. So that sort of grouping can be achieved with any of the different dimensions that are available. So you might be wondering, what the heck are dimensions? Really, it's like we've got this one big container containing all of your companies, all of the jobs and cost codes and vendors and suppliers. Every transaction that goes through the system gets flagged with a series of these dimensions, allowing you to then run reports and pull that data together using just a particular flag. So in a multi-entity environment, every single transaction has to have an entity. Now, the other great thing is if you've got, say, cost of sales accounts that you want to ensure that every transaction that goes into cost of sales has a job, cost code, and category, you can build rules about that. So in the general ledger, when we go into the accounts, you can actually edit the account and enforce locations to be required. So you could actually, for your cost of sales, go in and say, okay, every single transaction that goes through cost of sales needs to have a job, cost code, and category. And so therefore, anybody who tried to post a transaction there that didn't have all three of those dimensions, they'd get an error message saying that they were required. And that way you can maintain control over particular accounts to ensure that it's got the necessary reporting that you need. Okay, so to demonstrate inter-entity transactions, as I said, it's a full multi-entity system. I'm just going to jump into this skyline. So you can actually define all of the inter-entity loan accounts and how each entity transacts with each other. So you're able to set up your mapping. So it looks a little bit complex and I won't go into it a great deal, but you have full control over the mapping of what loan accounts to debit and credit when two entities interact with each other. Now, the great thing about that is the system is then able to automatically generate all of those inter-entity transactions. So if you, probably the best way to quickly display it to you is go and show you a journal entry. So if I just quickly do a general journal, and okay, so I'm going to go from entity 600. Sorry, no, not E, just 600. And let's go to printing. Okay, I'm going to take $100 out of here, and I'm going to put 50 of it in here, and 50 of it in here. Okay, so, under normal circumstances in something like MyOb account write, this wouldn't be possible. Each company is in a separate database and you really just can't interact between them automatically like this. Now, all I need to do to get this to generate the inter-entity transactions is to go and put my source entity. So my source entity in this case, I'm going to put it as 600 because that's where I'm taking it out of. And so I want to create a loan between entity 601 and 602 with entity 600. Okay, so now when I post this, just go back into those general ledger entries. There it is at the top there. Let's go and view it, and you'll see what the system generated. So here it is that what I entered, And as we scroll down, you'll see the system has automatically put in the loan with entity 600 for entity 601 and 602, and then for entity 600, the loans with the other two entities. So it's automatically balanced it all up for us based on that configuration that was done when all the entities were set up. Now, the cool thing about that is they don't have to be, it doesn't force you to have to interact with each other. So another example would be, sometimes you have more of a triangular structure. So you have a head company and then you have its subsidiaries, and you don't want to have loan accounts with each other, with the subsidiaries. So in that case, what you can do is have the head company sitting at the top as the source. And perhaps I am transferring something from the two subsidiaries. Okay, so I'm transferring some money between each other, but I don't want a loan with each other. I want the two subsidiaries to have a loan with the head company. So when I post this one, sorry, got to put a description in. Gosh. Okay, so if we go and view this one now, it looks a little bit different. You can see that entity 601 is down here, and it's interacting with the loan for company 600. 602, so location 602, again has a loan with entity 600. And then entity 600 has a debit and credit for the two loans for the other two entities. Okay, so it's going in more of a triangular structure rather than directly with each other. So you have a lot of flexibility with how you want to structure your inter-entity transactions. Now, other than just general journals, obviously you can have this happening automatically in accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash management. So if you were to transfer funds between two bank accounts held by two different entities, it's as simple as just going in and doing a funds transfer, and the system will automatically balance that up and do the inter-entity transactions. The same with accounts payable or accounts receivable. If you're paying or receiving money in one entity for an invoice held by a different entity, again, the system will automatically balance that up via the loan accounts. So it's a short and sweet session. That's pretty much what I had planned to show you all today. Have we got any questions? Anything that you'd like to know a bit more about?
Question from Shane about dimensions. He showed us some pretty comprehensive set of dimensions there, but are they customizable by user or by entity? How does that? What options are there available?
Okay, so the list of dimensions to start with, you can actually name them. So you've got some terminology. So you can see there's a lot of names throughout the system that if you a common one is this task. So a task, if we go and edit this, you'll see that we've decided to name it as a cost code instead of a task. So you can actually go and customize your names to suit the terminology that you're used to. And if you do operate across multiple countries, you can actually define a different name for a different region. Now, the language that and the terminology that goes with it is then defined by the user. So if my user is set up to be English Australia, then it will use the Australian terminology. So just down here. So I can select my language on my individual users, and you'll get the language applicable to them. And I can set, time zones, formats, date formats. So if you are across multiple countries and you do need different formats, then that's all customizable by user. In terms of who has access to which dimensions, that really comes down to the permissions. So it does have very granular permissions for users and roles. So you can actually get in there and set up roles that are applicable to the different positions within your company, and then apply one or more roles to your users. Now, in terms of your user setup, you can then restrict even further to say, not just what roles they have, which gives them the ability to access particular tasks and set up functions, but you can also restrict them to work in only particular entities as well. So if you do need to restrict, perhaps you have a combination of some companies and then some trusts, and you only have particular people you want to be able to access the trusts, you've got that ability to go and set those permissions. So they're only allowed to work in particular entities. Likewise with the departments as well.
Okay, thanks. Let's answer that one.
Cool. Anybody else?
If we scan an invoice in via, AP automation, will it automatically do the, can we set rules up if it's, say, for example, a power bill, and we want it to go 50% to company 1 and 20% to company 2 and 20% to company 3 and 10% to company 4? Will it automatically do that for you if you're using OCR?
Not sure about the OCR. You can definitely allocate. There are some allocations that you can set up. So the percentages you said, where it's always going to go those fixed percentages across the different entities, you can actually go and set up some allocations and basically define. So if we have a look at this one, define what the percentages are per entity. And so when you're doing your data entry, instead of having to enter, in this case, 3 different lines with the 3 different entities, I can simply select that allocation ID, and the system, so I just put it all in one single line on the invoice to that allocation ID, and the system will automatically do that split for me. So it will really speed up your data entry. So with the OCR, I would think it would be the same way as long as you're making use of this allocation ID.
Excellent, thank you. That answered my question.
Awesome.
All right. Do we have any other questions from anyone else? All right, then that's a wrap. Thank you very much, Pam, for showing us a very high-level overview of Intacct. And if anybody wants to reach out to Thrive to understand any more about that, please feel free to contact myself. My email is sarah.f for Freddie @thrivetech.com.au, or just call through to the 1300 number, and someone can put you in touch with myself, and we can answer any of the questions that you would like. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed today, and I hope to hear from somebody or all of you at some stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye now. Thanks, Pam.
All right. Thanks.